Houston, say again, please.
Houston, we've had a problem.
Hey there folks, welcome to another vlog of mine where I get to ramble about all things random or something like that. Firstly, before we get going, I just want to say a whopping great thank you to everybody who has subscribed to the channel and been watching what I'm doing and liking what I'm doing. And it's awesome. We got over the 200 marker there, I noticed, and it means the world to me that people enjoy seeing what I do and talking to me about it and just generally being involved with what I'm doing. It's awesome and heartwarming, and I thank you all for subbing up, and hopefully it continues to grow and I get to meet more awesome people like your good selves. Today I wanted to chat about what a new gen game is, and I've had a lot of comments from people who, quite rightly, with their opinion, and it's fine. I understand that everybody sees things differently. That's not what this vlog's about. I'm not trying to change people's minds so far as I'm happy for other people to have an opinion, and if they have a different opinion to mine, that's absolutely fine. What I do want to talk about though is I think there's a perception of new gen games, and I think this perception comes heavily from console gaming, and it's because there's been an intent by developers, and especially AAA developers, to try and make games more and more lifelike, to make us feel like we're in real worlds all the time. And I think that there's been far too much of an emphasis on how a game should look and feel on a more powerful machine. And I think console gamers, not through any fault of their own, I've never been a PC gamer, but I think PC gamers have had an opportunity and a much more broad spectrum of games to play than we ever have on consoles. And only because I've played games and looked into them an awful lot, and because I love RPGs so much, I always wondered why it was that PC gamers got so much more of them than we did. And that's just simply down to the amount of developers out there who never find it worth their while to develop for the console market. That changes year to year, and as the consoles get more powerful, we see more of them coming over, like we have done recently with Divinity and Wasteland 2 and these sorts of things. So I think PC gamers don't expect the same things that console gamers do, and I think PC gamers, especially with RPG games, have seen a broad spectrum of them, and RPG games have never been, for PC gamers, about a first person or third person view of one character. An awful lot of them have always been party RPGs, top down views, controlling a multitude of characters and all this sort of stuff. Now these are beautiful games, and not all of them, but a lot of them are beautiful games. And Divinity is a beautiful game. And I had a post on one of the Divinity videos from a fine gentleman who was of the opinion that the new gen consoles are worth far more than that game. That saying that, is this something that makes you go wow on new gen? No, it is not. Therefore, it's not good enough, and it shouldn't be sort of shouted about almost. Those weren't his words, to be fair, but that's the way I read into it. And to be fair to him, he did say before his comment that he wasn't saying it was a bad game. He was just saying that he believes that the new gen should provide more. Now, I did reply to that, obviously, with a few thoughts of my own as to where he was coming from, but I appreciate his point of view, like I do with all points of view. And firstly, that Divinity game couldn't have existed on the last gen consoles, full stop. It's too big and it's too beautiful. It would have looked a lot uglier on an old gen console, full stop, without any shadow of a doubt, as would Wasteland 2 wouldn't probably have run on an old gen console either. So those games couldn't exist on the old consoles. They weren't good enough to do them. So, as they look on new gen. So, firstly, there's that to be said. Secondly, it's a different style of game than the likes of The Witcher and Skyrim and these sorts of games. You can't compare Divinity to The Witcher or Fallout or Skyrim. You know, they are very different things. You can't, if you zoom in onto the landscapes, onto the characters of everything that's going on in Divinity, you can see the beauty and you can see just how good they are. Everything looks. You can home right in on it. And I think because it's not an over-the-shoulder view, or it's not a first-person view, and the world isn't being made to look like it's a real world, suddenly it's not beautiful. It's not beautiful enough to be next gen. And it's like that's not what they're trying to make. They're not trying to compete with The Witcher. They're not trying to compete with Fallout or Skyrim or any of that. They're trying to make a top-down person view party RPG. So I think there's far too much of an emphasis on how a game should look on a new gen console. The other thing I should say is the new gen consoles aren't as powerful as people are making them out to be. I mean, they're not. They're far more powerful than the ones we had. Make no doubt about it. They are. They're pretty uber in comparison. But then, by no stretch of the imagination are they anywhere near as powerful as what top end gamers are using on PC now. I mean, there's always a gulf, and quite honestly, there was a little part of me that was quite disappointed that they didn't do 16 gig of RAM in these new consoles. I thought they would have done. I thought they might have future-proofed them. But it says to me that maybe they've already accepted that there's maybe only a maximum 7-year lifespan in these consoles before they're probably launching a new one. Because the technology is moving so quickly. I was reading an article about virtual reality, and they were saying that these virtual reality headsets they're not going to be capable of giving us the experience that we're expecting on this gen of console. They need the next gen of console to give us the experience they want to give us with those. So we will see them. I mean, your Project Morpheus and everything's going to come out. I just don't think it's going to. I mean, it'll be looking around like this, go woo, amazing for a few games, and it'll be exciting for a short period of time, but then developers will find it very, very difficult to give us stuff on these consoles. I think anything of any major thought. I mean, the very fact that they didn't mention anything about No Man's Sky. I mean, I'm not convinced that No Man's Sky is going to come out for Morpheus. For those of I'm rattling on about Morpheus. Morpheus, for those of you that don't know, is PlayStation's version of the Oculus Rift virtual reality headset. And I'm not overly convinced about virtual reality headsets anyway. I think they will be a gimmick. I mean, I can't see myself sitting with one of those on for the space of time that I game for. I mean, it'd be very uncomfortable after a period of time. Not to mention the amount of headaches you'll probably get from having stuff that close to your face. So, anyway, I digress a little bit. So I think there is far too much of an emphasis on graphics for new-gen consoles. You have to weigh up what a game is and what it's about. There was another conversation, it was a Twitter conversation, I think, and it was regards a game looking more... actually, it wasn't one conversation. I've had several conversations about one game looking better than another, and it was comparing... I think it was comparing Fallout with The Witcher, and then there was somebody saying that the Mad Max game didn't look as good as, The Last of Us and stuff like that. Now, okay, you have to back up a little bit there. There's when you're developing a game, I'm not a developer, but I kind of know how this stuff works. If you're developing a game and you want to pile everything into graphics, and you're making generally speaking, that will happen if you're making a linear experience. So that said, you're not going to be in a world where you can roam around freely and do whatever you like. It will be a very linear experience. You'll only be allowed to walk on certain paths. And that game will look awesome, and it will give you a story, and it will give you loads of action, no doubt, like The Last of Us or Uncharted or all of these, Gears of War, all of these sort of games. They aren't open world, and they can be made to look incredible. You can't expect a game that is open world to have the same sort of graphics. It can't do it because there is not enough room in the hardware for it to be able to make it look that good and make it that big. You can't do it. So there is a balance to be struck by anybody making any kind of game. They have to decide what it is they're going to make first off. If it's a linear experience, then great. They still have to look at the concept of gameplay, and they still have to look at how interesting it is for the player. I mean, you only have to look at The Order 1886 to see just how cheesed off people were, that it was just all about the beauty and not... Well, to be fair to The Order, it's not just about the beauty, but you could see that that's where most of the time was spent, and they obviously didn't put enough time into making it interesting to play. So the replayability of that game is nearly zero, really. I mean, I have no doubt there'll be a second one and it will be a lot deeper, but everything went into the graphics and there was a bit of a lacking in everywhere else. But if you look at The Last of Us, looks awesome, linear game, it gives you a little bit of room to wander about, but it's not open world. It only gives you some houses to go in and loot for some stuff. So, yeah, they have to weigh up whether they're going to make a game like that or they're going to make a game which is open world and give you everywhere to look and everywhere to go and touch every piece of land. And if you're going to make a game like that, you can't put all the power into the graphics. So you have to say, right, how much do we want to let them wander about and how much is going to go into graphics? Which led to another conversation that I had about The Witcher looking better than Fallout 4. Now, I haven't played all of Fallout 4, I've only played the opener. And it's a great looking game. And it's a very, well, I love the beginning of it. I'm just holding on to it till I've got more time to play it. That's why I've not played anymore. But I played The Witcher. I've done it as a Let's Play on the channel. And that game, yes, I believe it does look... I think it looks a little bit better than Fallout does in places. Not all over, just in places. I think it deals with cutscenes better. I think it deals with... It's very clever in the way that it shows you how people talk to each other, for example. So it's kind of almost into a cutscene, but not quite. So they're quite clever about where they make it look really pristine. But it's a really good looking game. But I think that they traded off a little bit of the power for roaming around in order to give you that little extra shininess on how it looked. Whereas Fallout 4 has given you a totally open environment and maybe traded off slightly more of the shinier look. So it's up to the developer what they want to do. To compare the two, Fallout, to be fair to Fallout, it's a less interesting environment. The Witcher's got, all sorts of creatures, all sorts of landscapes, all sorts of different environments it can go to. Fallout is what it is. It's a desert barren world from an apocalyptic annihilation of nuclear weapons. So there's only so much you can do. But to compare the two is kind of fair, but they are very different environments, and I do think that one developer traded one thing and the other one traded another. If you're comparing them directly, The Witcher 3 is not, in my opinion, a fully open world game. It's open world to the point where you've got an area you can run around, then you've got to teleport over to another area you can run around, and you've got another area you can run around. But you cannot navigate that world without moving from one area to another. You can't just go from that place to that place. Fallout 4, Skyrim, these sorts of games let you do that. They let you run from point A of the map to point Z of the map over the other side. And you will hit a wall. I mean, it's got an end, but you can run the entire environment. And in order to give that, I think The Witcher traded off that area of movement and just honed it into... In fact, Dragon Age or Inquisition did the same thing. So you had areas you went to. It doesn't make them worse, doesn't make them better, doesn't make them... It just makes them different. It just means that there was a balance that was struck. That's all. So I think it's important for us as gamers to recognise and understand that there are very different developers out there. There's very different games to be made. There's very different stories to be told. There's very different... Everybody's different. Like, I don't want every game to be a AAA, beautifully shining, glimmering game that looks the same every time I play it. I don't want that. It would kill gaming, because if what you get is the same thing over and over again, it would be dull and monotonous. You'd pick up a controller and go, oh, this again, and that is just not what I want. I mean, part of the reason I've been playing Divinity so full on is because I've never had the opportunity, other than Dragon Age, I've never had the opportunity to play a game where it was that kind of top-down kind of view of a party of four running around, manipulating how they look and how they play and the skill sets they get and all that sort of stuff. As a console gamer, we never got a lot of it. We got, I can only think of Dragon Age that gives me that same kind of thing. So I want to see more of that. I want to see more of the indie type developers coming through. I want to see more of the European developers coming through who don't have that kind of money to spend on it, but what they do give us is an interesting, different game to play. I mean, Arcania, which I did kind of a Let's Play on the channel, I mean, that got a lot of stick from a lot of people. And you know, fair enough. That's fine if you look at it and go, "That's bollocks" compared to The Witcher. Well, yeah, okay, yes, it is. If you're looking at the graphics and comparing it to The Witcher, then it is going to look rubbish in comparison. But it's a completely different experience. I don't turn on the Arcania game and expect to be playing The Witcher. It's got its own quirks, its own charm, its own world. I can look at that game and I can see the beauty that little developer managed to get from that game, and it's a big game for a developer of that size. And the fact that I think I saw a comment on the channel that said, "I can't believe this shit made it to new gen," and I thought, I don't understand the mentality of someone who believes that. Like, why is it not okay for an average looking game to come onto this console? It's fine. It doesn't have to be The Witcher 3. It's just another game that we can enjoy and experience and have fun with. I've played Arcania about 5 times now, and it has bugs all over it. In places it looks awful. Its battle system is so basic, it is unbelievable. But you know what? It was just fun. I got so much fun out of that game, and that is what it's about. You know, I mean, there's different levels of fun in gaming, I grant you. You know, you don't feel like you're having the time of your life playing The Last of Us, which is a very dark and miserable world, but it's fun of a different kind. But I had fun playing Arcania. And that's what it's about. You know, it doesn't matter whether it looks like a AAA awesome glimmering game, or whether it looks like Arcania and has bugs all over it. Frankly, most of the AAA games have got bugs all over them. We're getting 20 gig bloody downloads on launch day. So we can't have a go at the smaller devs for having bugs in the game, really. But I found so much quirk and charm in that game that I just don't find in any AAA developer type games half the time. The Witch is probably a shining example of how the AAA developers should probably treat their fans, actually. The amount of DLC and how cheap it was, and all sorts of free stuff that you got while you were playing The Witcher. Dying Light, another company that have treated their fans really well. I mean, they're getting shed loads of stuff for next to nothing. So I think people, I'm digressing again. I do that, you know, people. So I think as console gamers, we need to open our minds a bit as to what a new gen game is. And for me, I don't even think we should say it is or it isn't a new gen game. It is a game I can play on my new gen machine. What difference does it make whether it looks incredibly better than the last gen, or whether it's just a much better experience than I had on the last gen, or whether it equals an experience I had on the last gen? It doesn't really matter. It just means that I can play it on my nice new shiny machine. And if don't get me wrong, I love a big spectacular game like Tomb Raider, like The Last of Us, like Uncharted 4 that's coming, Halos, all these sorts of Gears of War that's coming, all these sorts of games. I love them. I love the spectacular. But this industry would be nothing without the quirky little titles that you if you don't go out of your way to experience these things, you're never going to really truly know what it's like to be soaked in a gaming world, because you're always going to believe that gaming is about just the ones that look most beautiful, and they're usually the shallowest of experiences. So I think we all need to kind of open our minds to, maybe it doesn't look as good as all of these other ones, but maybe I should give it a go anyway, which is something I started doing probably about a couple of years ago, and I started trying out things that I wouldn't have done normally. And I think if we all do that, I think we'll find a much richer experience in the gaming world that we find ourselves sat in. There's so many beautiful little games out there, and I'm still guilty of it myself. I'm still guilty of not trying out a lot of the indie games on the PlayStation 4, and there's shed loads of them. You know, there's so many of them. I mean, just before I wrap up, I mean, a prime example of games that are blowing everybody away, well, not everybody, but people that like story games, are all of the Telltale games. Things like, well, I just finished Tales of the Borderland, which was probably one of the funniest experiences I've ever... I laughed my ass off for the entirety of all 5 episodes or whatever it was. Absolutely brilliant. The Walking Dead games, both 1 and 2, The Wolf Among Us, and all of those games, I played all of, well, bar Borderlands, I played all of those games on the PS3. Sorry, I didn't play. No, okay. Walking Dead 1 and The Wolf Among Us. I played on the PS3. The other two I played on the PS4. Now, don't get me wrong. That these have their own style, but they are by no stretch of the imagination a so-called new gen experience, are they? I mean, they are point and click, beautiful pictures, and there's a lot of work goes into them, and they're awesome games. But you don't hear people going, they're awful, they look awful, they're not new gen. They are, because people accept that they're different. But in other genres, they're not willing to divide their mind like that. So it's interesting. It's interesting. But as I say, I mean, these are my thoughts, and my thoughts alone. And I appreciate that everyone has their own thoughts. And if you're a person that believes that every game on a more powerful system should look awesome to the point of almost looking like a movie, then fair praise to you, because that's what your gaming experiences need to be like for you to enjoy them. Then that's fine. But you will have less of them because there's no way that every game's going to match up to that. But the big developers will be able to give you. Unfortunately, the big developers, an awful lot of them are going with the yearly churning out of things, which can often lead to quite shallow experiences. But I can only hope that there's a lot of new stuff coming around the corner. There's a lot of regurgitated stuff at the moment. We're getting... Actually, a lot of you have seen me posting up Far Cry 4 stuff, because I've had that game for ages and I've never played it. And I'm totally soaked in that. I mean, it's the same concept, really. It's like a first-person Assassin's Creed type thing. You get a map, you got to unlock all the areas to see them. It doesn't play like Assassin's Creed, but the open environment, and you unlock areas, and you've got tasks to do and people to help, all that sort of stuff. And it's the same vibe, but it's the same concept, but with a different vibe. And I'm loving it. I'm absolutely drenched in that world at the minute. I mean, the amount of rhinos I'll kill to make a wallet. I classify myself as quite a kind person to animals, but in that game, they are all dying. I've got stuff to make. I need to put extra bloody bow arrows in me, and extra money in me wallet, and more ammo in me pouch, and all sorts. I've got to kill animals to do it. It's the only way I can do it. Don't judge me. So there you are. There's my ramblings on what, or how maybe we should open our minds to what is perceived to be new gen. And can we stop using the phrase next gen, people? We've had these for 2 years. It's current gen. But I'll let new gen go. But it's not next gen. We've had them for 2 years. Come on. So new gen or current, people, please, for God's sake. It's been an honour and a privilege rambling away to you again in one of my vlogs. I shall see you all very soon in either a Let's Play or a gameplay or a PS4 share or something of the ilk. You all take it easy. Bye.